Greetings, my name is Fernando Pelusi, and I will be presenting, along with the rest of my team, the 18th century. I will now present you the card I developed for this century. As you can see, the century lasts from the year 1701 to the year 1803, being of the medium duration. This century starts with the succession wars, the first being the Spanish Succession War and the second being the Austrian Succession War. These two events are together since they are basically the same thing. King or ruler without an heir dies, and people are fighting over who gets the territory in order to keep the balance of power. However, during the Austrian succession, in which European powers are fighting over who gets the now ownerless territory of Silesia, the Prussians were victorious, which was one of the main reasons for the 7-Year War, which, as its name suggests, lasted 7 years. During this war, several countries within Europe fought each other, including their colonies, which started conflict all around the globe, and as I said earlier, was caused due to Austria wanting the at the moment Prussian territory of Silesia. However, this battle was lost. The Austrian succession, however, along with the previous war, also helped spark the American Revolution, because during this period was when the American colonists took territories from the previously French Canada, only for those territories to be given back by the British. These wars, in which Britain was greatly involved, did not come cheap, which is why they also raised the colonists' taxes without them having a say. This is what caused the American Revolution, which ended with the American independence, allowing the U.S., which is now the biggest economic power of the world, to start. These battles, like I said before, did not come cheap at all, which was certainly the case in France, as the rising taxes were also the cause of the French Revolution, which allowed for the creation of a power vacuum, which furthermore allowed Napoleon to rise to power and create the French Empire. We are now reaching the point in which I decided to end this century. This point being the Napoleonic Wars, which have a large importance, like helping America grow its economy, a large change in European borders, the end of what is called the Holy Roman Empire, and etc.
I'm going to talk about the 18th century. The 18th machine revolution the economy industry of the South. The Farmer's Almanac. Benjamin Banneker first published the Farmer's Almanac in 1782. Banneker was also the first black American inventor. The Franklin stove. This invention by Ben Franklin was the first heater that could still heat a room long after the fire was extinguished. Power loom. Developed by Edmund Cartwright in 1785. This machine revolutionized the weaving industry by automating the weaving process. What's a steam engine? Watt did not invent the steam engine, but he improved its operation by making an engine that could. They used steam in a condenser separate from the main cylinder. The optical telegraph. The optical telegraph was used for long-distance communication. This particular invention was the first dependable means of long-distance communication. So this was like almost the phone that we know. Jefferson's motherboard blow in a bare motherboard that lasts longer. This is but one of the many of his inventions. The lightning rod. Benjamin Franklin invented this device to help prevent damage to buildings by lightning strikes. A really good invention. And the last one, the first submarine. David Bushnell invented the first submarine, called the Turtle. This craft was the first used during the American Revolution in that time. That's all. Thanks.
Century that was characterized by a stage called Happy Age due to economic growth. This century was characterized by economic growth with signs of progress and prosperity for the European bourgeoisie. But is then that the first industrial crisis occurs in European countries and efforts is made to achieve industrialization. They improve living conditions thanks to healthier hygiene better in nutrition, and advances in medicine. This reduces infant mortality due to industrialization. New forms of work organization are imposed, and wealth, both national and domestic, with the largest surpluses being achieved in agriculture. Another feature of this century is monetization. Everything is money. Paper money appears and the first national banks are created. Families need money to make purchases. Villages continue to be the usual place of consumption with their local and temporary markets. But the urban population needs to have a permanent market in the city. Since the population was increasing in the city, this produces an important flow of exchange between the countryside and the city. Industrialization involves the new form of task organization, such as the division of labor to increase effectiveness and productivity in factories. The merchant acquired a dominant position over the manufacturer since he was the one who sold the product to specialists. Productive concentration in search of agglomeration economies. Freedom on stagnant trade is also claimed by the taxes on the passage of goods.
Hello teacher, my name is Diego Villagomez Baez and today I will present you the 18th century politic. Another characteristic of the 18th century is the monarchical absolutism, reaches its greatest strength and splendor through Europe. It is in this century where the bourgeoisie is already opposed to the absolute monarchy. Since the bourgeoisie, which already had economic power, aspires to achieve political power, monopolized by the nobility. It will be the bourgeoisie that takes the leading role in this century, which faces the established political social system. They aspire to destroy, so they call all regiment. Synthesis is absolutism and the privilege of the nobility and clergy. It develops a new culture, the illustration. Regarding European international relations, a political system appeared that was called they have a great predicament. Today I will present you the 18th century politic. Another characteristic of the 18th century is the monarchical absolutism, reaches its greatest strength and splendor through Europe. It is in this century where the bourgeoisie is already opposed to the absolute monarchy. Since the bourgeoisie, which already had economic power, aspires to achieve political power, monopolized by the nobility. It will be the bourgeoisie that takes the leading role in this century, which faces the established political social system. They aspire to destroy, so they call all regiment. Synthesis is absolutism and the privilege of the nobility and clergy. It develops a new culture, the illustration. Regarding European international relations, a political system appeared that was called they have a great predicament, European balance. This formula advocated by England represents the political instrument of the emerging British imperialism. Through this system, England managed to eliminate any dangerous rival on the continent, confronting it with another power or with a coalition, while its fleet privilege in the ocean and its troops conquer supremacy in the colonial world. In this sense, there is no doubt that the 18th century began the English political preponderance, as the 17th century had been of French predominance and 16th centuries of the Spanish boom. Following these models, the England Thomas Jefferson, along with General Washington, John Adams, and others started the War of the Independence of the 13 colonies of the British Crown. The new state will be based on equality and democracy, which would later lead to creation of the United States of America, today's greatest superpower. In the new European English order, the religious influence that had exerted such importance until the middle of the 17th century completely disappears, thus creating patriotism. Thank you for your attention.